Alright, today we're working on a Chrysler Town Country 3.3 liter engine. This is a 2005, and we're going to do the timing chain to get rid of the rattle noise that you've got coming from the side of the engine, posted in the other video we have. So we're going to start with the first step, which is to disconnect the negative battery cable. So we pulled off the negative battery cable. Next thing we're going to do is drain the radiator. So this is where you can see it's just sort of spraying out around the threads of that thing. We're kind of just capturing it all in the drain pan. Okay, so we've got it fully drained out of the radiator. It stopped flowing. We ended up filling up one whole drain pan and then part of a second one here. Now that the radiator is all drained, the next step is to drain the oil. So we've got a drain pan and put a little bit of cardboard under it, and we've got the vehicle supported on jack stands and jacked up. Okay, next up we're going to take the lug nuts off of the wheel so that we can remove the tire. Alright, so we're looking here at the bracket thing that mounts the transmission and the engine together. It talks about to remove the oil pan that we want to take off this attaching bolt here that goes into the transmission off of that bracket. It is an 18mm bolt, and so we're going to take that bolt off first. Okay, so we got the one bolt off there at the transmission where that bracket is, and then we loosened the two bolts on the other end of the bracket that are mounted into the engine block. One of them, all of those three bolts are 18mm. One of them is kind of hard to get to because of a little pipe there on the back side of the engine, and so for that we had a offset box wrench that we were able to use to get on that, make it a little easier to get off of there. The other two were pretty easy to get with just a standard wrench. Right now we're taking the shield off the front of the transmission, little 10mm socket on those to get those off. Okay, now that we got the shield off the front of the transmission, it just slid right out of there after we got all the bolts off. We're taking all these oil pan bolts off. They're all a 10mm. We're using a battery-powered impact gun to take them off just to make it a little faster and easier. Okay, now that we've got the oil pan off, the next thing we need to do is remove this oil pickup tube. You can see there's one little bolt right there. We're going to take the belt off. So we've got that pickup tube just took that bolt out, and it just dropped straight down into the oil pan. So we're going to get the belt removing tool and take the belt off. Okay, so we've got the belt off, you can see here, and we're looking at the harmonic balancer. Okay, we're here removing the harmonic balancer. We've got this bolt here in the end loose. So we're able to just pull that straight out, set that aside. And then we've got a few special tools here. Sorry about the video. First one is an insert tool. It's one of the special tools, number 8450, and then that goes straight in here in the end and has a little dimple in the end of it for your puller to go into. And so next we're going to get the puller out and put that on here. This is our puller. It's number 1026 by OTC. Okay, so we got the 3-jaw puller loosened up, and we've got it on there, and so we're going to tighten the screw here on the end. Pardon the tape on my finger, I broke my finger the other day. And we're going to tighten this screw down here on the end and use that to pull this wheel right off of here. Okay, so we've got a socket on the end of here, and we're just tightening it down. the AC compressor loose and set it aside per the instructions. Okay, I got the AC compressor loose. There is 2 nuts on the front and then 2 bolts here on the side that face the front of the vehicle right by the oil filter. So pull those 2 bolts out and those 2 nuts off, and then it kind of hangs loose. Next we're going to take off this lower radiator hose right here. It's got 2 clamps, one on this end, one on the other end, and then we're going to pull that hose off. And then as part of this, we're going to go ahead and replace that hose, even though you don't have to as part of the job. It's a good idea just as a preventative maintenance. Okay, we're using just some pliers here. As you can see, now we're down to just this little pipe. I'm going to go ahead and take it off. Just like should come right out of there. Okay, one part we didn't show there. There is a little hose that goes into the back of the water pump here. You can see where we took that pipe off of there, and then there's the pulley for the water pump. It's a little tiny section of hose that goes on the back side of it. We took the clamp off from the back side of the water pump there so that when we pull the timing chain cover off, it'll come straight off because that hose is attached to it. So we're removing the engine mount on the right hand side here. Getting that engine mount off, I supported the engine here with a jack. Put that right underneath the transmission there since we've got the oil pan off. Got a driver here. We're going to take the bolts off for this engine. Makes, well, there went 1 bolt. Makes a lot of noise. And then we got to take these 3 off.
Okay.
Okay, so we got the engine mount bracket off of there. The engine mount's off. Next here, we're getting the idler pulley off of here.
There were 4 bolts in this bracket. One was hidden kind of up under there and it was a different size. The rest were 15, it was 13. And we're loosening that now.
So I'm not sure why they wanted it off, but they said take this bracket off. Fortunately, these 2 bolts are so ridiculously long that you have to raise the engine back up a bit in order to get them to come out. So they go right there where she's pointing. In order to raise it up, we put the jack right underneath where the oil pan would mount to. And you can see here kind of how we raised it along that back lip there. We're down here. This is right underneath that bracket we just took off. There's the camshaft position sensor that has to come out. So the little ear that holds that sensor on, just brittle plastic, just broke off. The heat from the engine after all those years, it just tends to wear it out. So we've unplugged the sensor there, as you can see, and we get to be a little more forceful with it now that we know that it's going to have to be replaced. So we just got a pair of pliers here. Okay, we now have the water pump out of there. It's really difficult to do. There's 1 bolt way back up here in the back that's kind of difficult to access. What we ended up using was an offset wrench, looks like this. We're going to go ahead and take the power steering pump off as well. Not completely off, just going to take it loose. So the first step of that is to take this whole cowl off at the base of the windshield. You just pop off these little plastic covers on the windshield wiper arms, and then take the nut off, which is a 15mm nut. Next, I'm going to close the hood and just grab one of these shafts and just wiggle it hard. Okay, now that we pulled it off, we've got a little clip here. Wiggle that out. And then the last step is there's a series of bolts that hold this guy on here. We got one here, you can see one here, there, and then there's one at the far end. And once those are off, it pretty much comes out. You also want to release these little clips here. If you can see that. See, it's moving. It's 3 13mm bolts, and boy, no easy way to put it there, just a pain in the ass to get through. You have very little clearance through here to reach them. Just ended up using a very short extension, a 13mm socket to get at them, and it was just a real pain to get it out. We actually had to raise the engine back up a bit in order to get enough clearance in there to get on the side of the pump, but you just go through the holes in the pulley, just take your time, try various extensions and various deep or shallow sockets to get enough clearance in this tiny little space. Now unbolting the cover, so just using a little power impact drill to take the bolts out of it. We tapped on it with a hammer right here on the back side, just lightly to break it free, get the seal off, and it's coming. Okay, finally got the timing cover off. This hose here on the back side of the water pumps, we had to cut it to get it to come off of there. Just did not want to come free, so we had to slice the hose off. We're going to have to get a new hose when we go to put all this back together. So, okay folks, we hit a heck of a difficulty there. Couldn't really film it, but you know, one of the instructions here is to rotate the engine over. Yeah, it's a compression thing, so we were trying to rotate the engine over, but it was a little too difficult to do with the spark plugs in because of the compression of the engine. It's still got good compression to it, so in order to try to do this, we ended up saying, well, we'll take the spark plugs out so that we're not fighting against the compression of the engine. Well, broke several of the spark plugs off. Okay, now we've made several more revolutions. Sometimes you have to turn around quite a bit before you get to where you're trying to get to. So we can see the arrow on the bottom here on the crankshaft is almost pointing straight up at the top. And she can't find her finger when she's pointing on the camera. And the black link here is almost right at the 3 o'clock position. And then the top, we see the arrow is almost pointing straight down. And then we're looking for that black link to be right at 3 o'clock on there as well. So we're close. We're just going to have to barely turn it a little bit to get